Hello and welcome to AstroChiron, the video companion for astrochiron.com, the one-stop shop for all things astrology, from readings to monthly horoscopes, to a free ask feature where you can reach me directly. This video is the first of its kind on this channel, especially in its length and in the work it took to make it. My Ascendants and Sun Sign series required research, but I actually read a book for this one, which isn't novel for me, pun intended, but I don't know how many people read anymore, and I say that as a bookseller. Anywho, this video is the first in a series that I call Reading the Stars. It began on astrochiron.com with the reading of Prince Harry's natal chart, and continues as Will Smith is my next topic. The second article in the series focused on Beyonce, fueled by my reading of Becoming Beyonce by the biographer J. Randy Taraborelli. The link for the article and the book are below in the description. The biography I read provided quite the look into the life of such a famously private person. She's so secretive, in fact, that we didn't have a clear birth time for her until her mother wrote about it in her own memoir. I actually wrote the article before her birth time was revealed and used the length of the piece to discuss whether she was the holder of a Leo Ascendant or a Libra Ascendant. Well, I was wrong, and that's fine. Astrology is not a science, but I approach it that way. It leaves room for exponential growth and understanding, as well as room for being wrong. That said, I did choose Libra rising for her, and that is pretty close to her actual ascendant sign, Aries Ascendant. This video will use this new chart, the information I garnered from her biography, and my own knowledge as a lifelong Beyonce fan, to create a holistic look at the music star of our lifetimes. Though she needs no introduction, she certainly deserves one. And who doesn't know Beyonce? She's mononymous, her voice is instantly recognizable, and the celebrities of the world line up to meet her at the Grammys. Beyonce Giselle Knowles-Carter was born on September 4th, 1981 to Celestine Ann Tina Beyonce and Matthew Knowles. She has RIAA's most certified titles for a female artist of all time and has 32 Grammy wins. She is Billboard's greatest pop star of the 21st century and one of Rolling Stone's greatest singers of all time. If she had to battle Madonna for the title of Queen of Pop, a fight which I believe Beyonce would win, then allow me to crown her Queen of Music, if no one has already. Standing aside, this video will come to you in 12 parts, much like the Zodiac, or in this case, much like the 12 houses in a natal chart. I will go through each of Beyonce's houses, discussing the planets within them and the signs leading them in order to draw parallels to each aspect of her life, going from her beginnings and how she asserts her identity, all the way to her spirituality and who she is in isolation. Let's start this journey together. We can only begin at the beginning, so we will start at her first house. Led by her Aries Ascendant, I believe this is where one of her previously speculated rising signs comes from. People were adamant that Beyonce was a Leo Ascendant native for reasons I went over in the article, which again is in the description. I believe that this energy comes from her first house ruler and thus her chart ruler, being her Leo Mars in her 4th house. This particular placement, her 4th house Leo Mars, I call the ambitious seeker. This is one of her empty houses, so we will look to its ruler to tell us the nature of her identity, her constitution, and her motivations. This placement indicates that she's strong in body and in instinct. I mean, have you seen a live performance from this woman? She can only be described as bombastic in her dance moves, always outputting megatons of energy in each 8 count. As the first house also concerns our instincts, Beyonce's always seem to be on point. She has this strong intuition, especially about her art. This is the same intuition that gave us the surprise release of her self-titled album in 2013 and the possible switch of Renaissance and Cowboy Carter in her currently ongoing 3-part album experience. Aries rising charts are often called natural charts, as each of their houses tend to match up with the sign that they're associated with. This does tend to give them a more free-flowing life. For example, their careers are led by ambitious Capricorn, their art led by creative Leo, and their relationships led by fair and romantic Libra. Finally, her motivations and frustrations are one and the same. She once said, quote, "When I'm not feeling my best, I ask myself, what are you going to do about it? I use the negativity to fuel the transformation into a better me." Aries is no stranger to conflict, and in fact, he often welcomes it. Beyonce's navigation of conflict and the fact that she faces it with her every public move is another way her ascendant shows itself. Next, we'll look at her second house, the house of finances, moral standings, and talent, which is led by the second sign Taurus. This house is ruled by B's Libra Venus in her 7th house. I've entitled this placement the amorous lover, which is expressed interestingly in her life. First, this would indicate someone who has several means of income or one sturdy one. This is notable because Beyonce is one of the highest paid performers who have ever lived. She even finds herself on several Forbes lists. She reportedly doesn't even update her net worth on any regular basis, if at all. It is in the hundreds of millions of dollars though, if it hasn't yet tipped $1 billion. This house indicates that there is immense value in her body and her talents. I just discussed B's talent of dancing, but her most notable talent is obviously her singing voice. And to draw connections, she did make all this money, at least if you trace it all back, based on her incredible singing ability, followed not so far behind by her ability to entrance a crowd with her powerful and passionate dance moves. As a final note, for the second house in general, B's husband may come up in this house, as he has helped her turn her talent-based income into one that is complex with investments, equity compensation, and sponsorships. Her second house is the first with a planetary body in it. In this case, it's Chiron, the asteroid of emotional affliction and healing past trauma. I've taken the liberty of connecting each of these planetary placements with one of the songs that she has written or co-written. In this case, her Taurus Chiron falling in this house is tied to Ring the Alarm, and let me explain why. With this placement, the revelation of her insecurities gives her an income. Songwriters must bear some of their soul to their listeners when penning their lyrics, and Beyonce is no exception. Songs like Resentment illustrate this wonderfully, but I think Ring the Alarm is more indicative of financial insecurity. Now don't get me wrong, Mrs. Carter is nowhere near broke, but lines like, "I'll be damned if I see another chick on your arm, and she gonna be rocking chinchilla coats if I let you go, getting the house off the coast if I let you go," certainly show that Beyonce is considering how the money they made together will go to someone else if they were no longer together. This Chiron placement may fear being upended by others, especially if it interferes with income or material stability. Finally, this placement may indicate someone who may have felt neglected by someone in charge of their money or their physical safety. This will come up later when we discuss Beyonce's father and manager, Matthew. On to B's third house, the house of familiar surroundings, your early education, and your siblings. This house is led by Gemini and ruled by B's Libra Mercury, which falls in her sixth house. I call this placement the tactical analyst, and this can certainly be seen in B's intelligence and ability to get to the root of any issue facing her. Seeing her as the comptroller of her shows and tours is a great indication of this house, as she is attuned to the lights, the cues, the music, and the choreography. This house placement indicates someone who constantly needs stimulation, which shows in B's work ethic during each album's era. She's not one to rest on the laurels of her previous project, and once she's done with one release or announcement, she's already on to the next step. Finally, this is the house of siblings, so we must mention Solange, her famous sister. This placement indicates that siblings are of immense importance to B, and they can likely be found around each other as often as possible. One could even call the various members of Destiny's Child her siblings as well. I mean, barring Farrah Franklin, that is. I'd argue that this placement also points towards B's half-sibling, her father's son out of wedlock. This story was highly publicized and pops up every now and again when the baby's mother mentions it to a reporter here or there. I won't touch too much on the subject because I find that there is a fine line between gossip and reporting, but Matthew did have a child, at least one child that is, while he was still married to Miss Tina. Speaking of Miss Tina, we are now on B's fourth house, which finds itself in Cancer. The fourth house is that of your inborn family, your roots, and your most private self. Interestingly, this house is ruled by B's secretive Scorpio Moon, which falls in her 8th house, a placement I've entitled The Discerning Opponent. This house placement would point to someone who is emotionally connected to their roots, especially their maternal family. As all Beyonce fans know, she does speak on her mother's side of the family a great deal. Her name itself derives from her mother's maiden name, Beyoncé, or Beyonce, depending on how the people pronounced it back then, or whether or not they spoke French. Much of her ancestor veneration is focused on her Louisiana family, from her Creole identity to their closeness with one another. This house placement indicates that B is strongly tied to her more nurturing parent, be her mother, as is the societal norm. Plus her father was much more business oriented than Tina was, despite her being an entrepreneur herself. I feel like this house has a great deal more about Miss Tina, as we only usually perceive her via her connection to Beyonce. Firstly, her willingness to take in Kelly Rowland when the latter's mother had work in Atlanta shows her comfort in taking on the role of the homemaker, despite her also running her own business. Scorpio's influence indicates that she possibly took on this homemaking role with a bit of spite, as I'm sure Capricornian Matthew preferred his woman in a supporting role, always working on the home and the family. Additionally, Tina's choice to grin and bear it in her marriage to Matthew was very much how Beyonce faced things in her own career and her own marriage troubles. People don't need to know was a common mantra for the family and fits with private Cancer's placement in the house of family and family secrets. But back to Be herself. I feel like this placement comes out the most with her tendency to brood alone when she's upset, a habit she's had since she was a child. Solitude would be a major key for this placement, so it's no wonder she needs it in order to process her emotions. Finally, we'll discuss the soul planet within this house, B's Leo Mars. In this house, I believe this placement connects most with B's song Sorry, or most aptly with the refrain I ain't sorry. Mars in this house would indicate conflict within the family, which instantly brought me to the time between Self-Titled and Lemonade, notably when Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce. This placement is very defensive of its perspective. In this song, B is no longer waiting behind the door to see if her husband is unfaithful like in Pray You Catch Me. Now she knows that he is, and she's fucking pissed. Despite her fame and love of privacy, she's expressing her anger, and there's nothing anyone can say to make her feel bad about it. Beside that, this placement is very one-sided when angry. It explains Beyonce going on her European tour just after finding out, leaving Jay to have to catch an international flight to explain himself. Finally, this placement would be extremely protective of its family, which is showcased in the line, me and my baby, we gonna be alright, we gonna live a good life. B was willing to remove Jay from the family dynamic just to keep her daughter in a healthy and happy situation. Now on to one of the more important houses in the chart of an artist, the 5th house. This is the house of creativity, of children, and your own inner child. Interestingly enough, Beyonce's house of art is ruled by her Virgo Sun, shining a harsh yet precise light on everything she creates. This explains her work ethic in her art and her amazingly creative career. Having her house of Riz being ruled by her sun, she is likely to have a strong magnetic aura and undeniable charm. People have reported being able to feel when Beyonce is in the building solely based on the strong energy she carries with her and the buzz she creates just by being around. This placement would make her the life of the party, though I'm not sure how much she enjoys being in the spotlight with Virgo's influence on this house placement. Now on to one of her most populated houses, the 6th house. Funny enough, the 6th house is the house tied to Virgo, so B stellium here makes her more Virgoan in her life, on top of Virgo's effect on her mannerisms and expression. Before we get to one of the 4 planets in this house, let's discuss the house in general. Firstly, it's ruled by B's Libra Mercury in the 6th house. We've already met Tactful Analyst in the 3rd house, which is her Libra Mercury, but here he takes on a more structured and responsible tone, as the 6th house is the house of employment, routine, and health. This would indicate that Beyonce has a rather healthy constitution. The only times I've heard of her being ill are her sinus issues mentioned in the biography, which may have cleared in her adulthood. Then of course there's her most recent knee injury, which was speculated to have happened while she was working. Natives of this house placement are often extremely modest despite their adherence to hard work. This can be seen with her tendency to always introduce herself to people like, hello, I'm Beyonce, as if we don't know who you are, girl. Anyway, this modesty means that she's likely to overlook her own needs. This leads to a tendency to overwork herself for the benefit of others. Every time she releases a new project, she sacrifices time with her family, her privacy, and her mental peace just to give the world another look at itself via her musicality. Now we can look at the the planets that populate her house of career. Okay, first we'll start with Cater to You, or her Virgo Sun. This placement is mostly seen in her diligent manner. She's something of a workaholic, something you can see in her tour dates, her early interview junkets, and her methods when recording. We all know that she's a perfectionist, a trait that is often given to the Virgo archetype. In her documentaries, it's obvious that she works smoothly with others. She's known for leading from the pack, expecting her team to work just as hard as she is. And with the suns tied to her father figure, this placement can also be seen in her hardworking but critical father. Though Virgo is represented by the pure and just maiden, I'm not too sold on the high moral standing of Matthew Knowles. He was a renowned businessman at Xerox before becoming a manager for his daughter. This is why it was so shocking to his family when Matthew gave up his cushy job at Xerox to act as B's manager, but I figured that he never doubted himself at all. Matthew grew up poor in Alabama, so he was no stranger to the struggle to make ends meet. Even socially, he had to climb that hill that all Capricorns must climb. He was in the first class of black students at a previously all-white school, shaping Matthew to be a fighter and someone who is very aware of his place in society, 2 lessons he teaches daughters. He followed her career from Destiny's Child to her going fully solo in 2003. This will solidly place him as a constant in B's career for the first 15 years of it. Only until Matthew came up as a suspicious party and an audit for Beyonce's finances did the two of them part ways, financially anyway. Her Libra Mercury is best encapsulated illustrated in her song 16 Carriages from her most recent album. This song presents something like a veneration of her childhood, where she acknowledges that her childhood stardom made her early years far from normal. This placement is one that is extremely hardworking, though the motivation behind it comes from a need to feel useful for others. I'm not certain how frank Matthew and Tina may have been in discussing Beyonce's career and their own financial status with her as a child, but she soon became the primary breadwinner in her teens. Mercury can also represent our siblings in our chart, and with this placement, her siblings are constantly busy with work, married to it. And this can be seen with all of her siblings, those by blood and those by business, as all are still very active in the music industry, along with Beyonce, of course. This is probably the best time to mention the apparent and odd fascination Beyonce fans tend to have with comparing Beyonce and her younger sister Solange. Beyonce being the more famous, older, and wealthier sister, it would be easy for Solange to be the bitter sibling, a role many cast her in with no justification. Their mother had them go to counseling as soon as Beyonce became famous to circumvent these feelings before they could fully settle into her young daughters. This presents the two as equally yoked siblings first and worldwide pop stars second. Jupiter also finds himself in this house, bringing luck and wisdom to B's house of career. This placement fits with her song Upgrade You, as the Libran influence pushed the sixth house's need to improve toward her partner. This planet placement tends to take a lot of responsibility for their spouse, in this case Jay-Z. People often look at their relationship from the lens of Jay being the elder of the two, more established and businesslike. They often forget that B had a lot to do with Jay's switch from Eniche and Rocawear extra large tees to his suave and bewatched persona that we know today. This Jupiter placement is also very generous with their partners, so I can imagine the gift-giving sessions these two multimillionaires get into. Jay aside, this placement comes out best in her ability to multitask. B must take on several roles in her job in order to be as constantly productive as she and her team are. Luckily, she's able to wear many hats. We've already mentioned how few health issues she shares with us, but the ones we know she does suffer from, her sinuses and her knee, can be explained by Jupiter's placement here in her house of health. Jupiter tends to bring fluid retention and soiling to whatever house it finds itself in. You think that's hard? Try having it in your first house like I do. That's hard. Finally, for the sixth house, we find Saturn here as well. Jupiter and Saturn are separate sides of the same coin. They both want growth, but Jupiter gets it with charm, while Saturn feels like nothing is gained without hard work and sacrifice. I feel as if Pretty Hurts is the best fit for this Saturn placement. This placement indicates that she's extremely concerned with others' opinion of her work especially. It almost comes off as if she needs an authority figure to validate her hard work. That said, other people may make her feel restrained in her ability to execute her job as well. This comes out the most with her father. Saturn often represents the more authoritative parent as well, and both of Beyonce's parents are Saturn-ruled Capricorn Sun. Her father had an ear for hits, so Beyonce relied on his word in the completion of her first few albums, but he also undermined her natural artistic ability and keen intuition. Either way, this placement indicates that her parents encourage her to work hard and rely on her service to others to achieve her goals. She has most of her planets, 8 of them in fact, clustered within these two houses, spread amongst 3 signs. Her 7th house is also chock full of planets, 4 of them in fact. But before we enter the second half of this video, let's give you guys a break from B while we pay some bills. Here's a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by me. I am the astrologer behind astrochiron.com, the one-stop shop for astrological readings, articles, horoscopes, and art. The first 20 subscribers to this channel will gain access to all 20 plus written and live readings for a 40% off discount. I have a free ask feature that you can use for quick questions that I will respond to via blog post. Readings range from $25 to $200, whether you want 3 questions answered in detail all the way to a thorough hour-long or more reading from me personally via phone or video chat, discussing your entire natal chart, the aspects within it, and each planet's placement. Again, that's astrochiron.com, ASTRO-CHIRON.com. Join our community today. For a 7th house and Libra native, relationships come naturally. People are attracted to her vibe and her aesthetic, totally appreciating and accepting the image she's presenting to them. These natives will find that their partners will be fair and fully devoted to their relationship, which can be seen in Jay-Z's devotion to Beyonce once they reconciled. This house placement indicates that their relationship requires a mutual sharing of ideas, which seems to be quite easy for 2 prolific and poetic songwriters and musical artists. This also shows a strong devotion to her partnership as well. Beyonce once said that Jay essentially taught her how to be a woman, And while I have issue with the phrasing of the sentiment stands, especially in the context of this placement. In fact, this placement says that she may even get lost in her partner at times, something I could feel in the poetry used in the Lemonade film. This house may be Beyonce's most powerful one, as it holds its own ruler, and that ruler is in both the house and the sign that it is most associated with. So Beyonce holds a Venus in Libra, and this placement's position in the 7th house indicates a huge focus placed on her partner. For this reason, I chose the song Rock, which was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor during the production of I Am Sasha Fierce. This placement holder can always be found with her partner, and that's true of J and B, especially for two global superstars and moguls. That said, their relationship relies on balance, likely in this case, a balance between business and family. Libra Venus could give her a beautiful countenance, especially concerning the way she uses words. She's likely a great moderator, one who shies away from arguments and tends toward a compromise. Jay-Z aside, we do know of one other serious relationship that Beyonce has been in. Linda Locke was her first serious boyfriend, and seemingly her only one other than Jay-Z. Their relationship was going fine until Beyonce's fame put pressure on Lyndall to be more successful. Taking all other issues into consideration, cheating, physical distance, age, the publicity of the relationship ultimately killed it. This is mirrored in her relationship with Jay-Z, who she didn't confirm was even her boyfriend until years after they began dating. She also didn't confirm their marriage again until years after the fact. This is indicative of someone who engages in a romantic relationship simply for the benefit of being with their partner. She isn't focused on what they're doing for her so much, but is always interested in what she can do for them, even offering to let Lyndall be her personal chef. Finally, we get to see Beyonce's husband, her rock, as she called him in the song this placement is named for. As I mentioned in my article, I thought Beyonce's focus on her husband pointed toward her having a Libra ascendant, but a Libra descendant is an even more powerful placement for spousal worship. As I said, she needed approval from Jay, much like she needed it from her father. This need lies in the fact that they know her art as well as she does, not because she needs their approval to feel talented or useful. Moving on to her Libra Pluto in this house, we're gonna switch to my power from the gift. She has power over others with this placement, and this especially applies to her partner. This placement indicates that B may obsess over how others perceive her, though I can imagine this is expressed in how she curtails her image, showing us exactly what she wants us to see. She's most powerful when she's at peace or in balance, which explains her tendency to stay above the fray. The only conflict I've seen B engage in this past decade has been social conflict. Her Pluto is joined by Vesta in this house of relationships and worldview. Vesta is the asteroid of devotion and dedication, further proving that Beyonce is quite the pick me, choose me, love me girl, though only with her significant other. I tie this Vesta placement to her song Yes. This is because her sense of dedication lies in conveying herself to others. She's very invested in the image she's putting forth, as aforementioned, and she dedicates a lot of time in manipulating how others see her. She's devoted to keeping her surroundings peaceful, as well being especially choosy with those she surrounds herself with. B mostly surrounds herself with family and always has. Her mother was her stylist and hairdresser, her sister a backup dancer, singer, and bonus member of Destiny's Child at times, and her cousin Angie has been her executive assistant since her time in DC as well. This placement also indicates that Beyonce is rather beautiful in her authority. She's a graceful leader who, while stern and often demanding, likely never goes to insults, belittlement, or emotional injury. Juno's placement in this house is the cherry on the I love my husband cake, as Juno is the asteroid that shows us to what and to whom we commit. This placement, however, falls in Scorpio and as such is entitled Pray You Catch Me. This placement makes for a partner whose love of analyzation fuels the fire of their relationship. Jay is a Sagittarius and has proven to be well-traveled, garnering a wide and varied palette for other cultures. Not only that, his command of words and the way he carries himself in interviews paints the picture of someone who is extremely intelligent, curious, and indeed analytical. That said, this placement also indicates a partner who may keep some of themselves hidden from others, even from Beyonce. The nature of this point is thoroughly discussed in B's album Lemonade, the album from which this placement gets its name, and Jay's album 444. From her point of view though, she feels as if she's able to tell him anything, even her deepest secrets. They're each committed to maintaining transformative and intimate relationships with others, especially each other. The 8th house is one often avoided as it deals with things that many people are uncomfortable with. Deaths, those metaphorical or physical, depths, those old or collected, and sex, whether for intimacy or for power. B's 8th house is led by Scorpio, the sign of transformation and execution of will. It is ruled by the ambitious seeker, her 4th house Leo Mars, just like he ruled her 5th house of creativity and children. Perhaps this explains B's ever-evolving artistry, or we can look to her Pluto, as modern astrologers would. This Libra Pluto in her 7th house was just recently discussed. His name is the persuasive villain, and he is the reason I believe that Beyonce is so easily vilified for things that she didn't directly do, if she did them at all. Perhaps this is because people's fear and avoidance of taboo topics intrigues and motivates her to create provocative art, or at least art that questions the norms. Because of this, Beyonce is very comfortable in danger and serious situations, navigating them without trepidation or perhaps with enthusiasm. Her intense fascination with the unknown and untested is seen in her love of jumping off big boats into bigger bodies of water, or just look at the 2013 surprise release of her self-titled album.
I'm sorry. I think Beyonce just released an album on iTunes.
What?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Whoa! Whoa!
Oh my god.
Whoa!
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my god, guys! Crystal is about to have a meltdown.
Album. Simply put, she likes to experience the scarier side of life, and it wouldn't shock me if she were into horror movies, roller coasters, and true crime podcasts. This house placement ensures that she's very severe in her interactions. Second chances will be extremely rare for her. Similarly, she's likely always on guard due to this placement. It's a running gag amongst fans that B can always spot when someone has a camera on her, even a mile away. There are 2 planets in this house, though one is her moon, so this house holds great precedence in her life's expression of her natal chart. Beyonce's Scorpio Moon falls in this house, earning its association with her song Creole, in which she reps her cultural background from Louisiana, Houston, and Galveston, prominent cities in the Creole community. With the moons tied to one's mother, B and Miss Tina have likely had an intense and transformative relationship over the years. Sultry and secretive, Tina Knowles is a perfect embodiment of someone's mother when their moon is in Scorpio. Miss Tina had to do a deposition for a financial case that the Knowles underwent, and it was heavily covered in the biography. Miss Tina seemed to hate every single minute of it. Beyonce's mother colored most of how she interacts with others, especially her husband and the public. It seems that this is where Beyonce gets most of her sense of privacy and control over how much of her personal life makes it out to us, the general public. Alien Superstar is the name of Beyonce's Scorpio Uranus. With it falling in this house of the taboo and the unknown, her life is conducive for experimentation of all kinds. She is full of constant transformation and evolution, which ensures that she's never the same person she was the last time she presented herself to us. In fact, her entire sense of being odd or abnormal stems from her intense relationship with society or its relationship with her. It is often touted that she is this generation's Michael Jackson, a fact made evident by people's reaction to her. Even other A-list celebrities treat her like we do. Uranus is a generational planet, indicating that its movements affect whole generations at a time. In this case, her generation's task is to change the world for the better. Beyonce does her part with her need to reframe the world around her. Artists are supposed to reflect the time that they're in, and Beyonce feels as if it's her job to tell the story as she turns it on its head. Take her groundbreaking album, Cowboy Carter, and how it broke the mold of every Beyonce album before it, while also cracking open the country music industry. I can't leave this house without mentioning one Miss Sasha Fierce. She looks like Beyonce, she squashes beats for Beyonce, and she even performed with Beyonce during the songs that needed a little extra edge. Sasha Fierce became something of a business partner for Beyonce, one who could voice her frustrations and anger. This utilization of a shadow self points toward the need for an expression of her darker self. Onward and on to the 9th house, the house of exploration and education. This house, led by B's Libra Jupiter in her 6th house, is the house of the diplomatic benefactor. Tied to travel, this 9th house placement indicates that Beyonce must travel often to support her way of life, made evident by her world tours and global vacations. This placement indicates that her post-secondary education, where most of us go to college, involved her learning the world via experience. Her young adult years were indeed spent jet-setting and touring, both domestically and internationally. This is all supported by her Neptune's placement in this house, as I've tied this placement to Worldwide Woman from B-Day. This placement makes it likely for Beyonce to sing or speak in other languages, especially the languages of places she travels to a lot. We often hear her sing arias and operas in Italian, and I'm not sure how well she speaks French, but I know it's something she's mentioned. Her nephew Jules is fluent in the language. Her generation, the generation that holds their Neptune in Sagittarius, is the carefree one. She expresses this via her sense of worldliness, throwing caution to the wind to experience as much of life as she can. As such, she is very open-minded about beliefs, including her own. She's a self-professed Christian, but it wouldn't shock me if she weaves in ancestor veneration, a variety of African religions, or even a little hoodoo in her worship. Additionally, she would love to study other cultures, which is evident in all her art, even in her use of Arabic scales. This was the last house to feature a planet, so the fun sung title recital bit is done. But let me know your favorite Beyonce song in the comments. And if you're gonna go down to the comment section, I don't see why you shouldn't give the video a like. That is if you're liking it. I mean, you're pretty far into this thing for someone who doesn't like it, so give it a like anyway, yeah? The 10th house is the house of career and reputation. It is led by our midheaven, and as such, it is the point of a celebrity's chart of which we are the most familiar. If Leo is the king of the zodiac, I'd argue that the queen would be either Libra or Capricorn. Libra is the queen of consort, beautiful, supportive, lawful, while Capricorn is the queen of regent, authoritative, firm, and final. This is why we call her Queen Bee, as her midheaven finds itself in Capricorn. She reigns from her throne in the music industry. This house placement makes for someone with a very serious reputation and career. Other artists describe B as very sweet, but I'd bet her employees would add much more to sweet, like strict, straightforward, and untiring. Simply put, she's likely quite the workaholic. Perhaps this stems from her always feeling as if she's being judged, something that I'm sure is common in celebrities of her magnitude. This placement would make her a very wise and amazing leader. This house is ruled by Libra Saturn in her 6th house, a placement I call the anxious self-saboteur. Beyonce is known for her lack of candor in interviews. She was always naturally bashful. This comes out a great deal in the way she dances around questions violated her, especially in her youth. I attribute this to this house being ruled by Libra Saturn, a placement which knows exactly what others expect of it. Finally, both of her parents are Capricorns, and the 10th house is the house most often associated with our view on authority. Her empty 11th house is ruled by the same anxious self-saboteur as her 10th house, though this time Saturn shows us how to use our work to bring on progression. We could also look to her Scorpio Uranus in the 8th house, called the innovative mystic. It is this influence that indicates that Beyonce tends to buck society, something we know her to do with her music and her career. She also tends to attract other visionaries who don't fit into what society wants. She worked with Prince, Michael Jackson, Luther Vandross, and other huge and often unorthodox stars very early in her solo career. She would love mentoring and being part of groups who introduce progress, which is evident in her role as the lead singer of the groundbreaking, award-winning group Destiny's Child. That said, she does recognize when something is a hindrance on her, keeping her from her personal progression. This was evident in her childhood, in her not wanting to sing in a chorus as a child. She preferred solo acts, or at the very least, solo parts. This is also expressed in her career's skyrocketing trajectory when she officially went solo with Dangerously in Love in 2003. Finally, but certainly not least importantly, we have the 12th house, where the 8th house is the house of the unknown, the 12th house is the house of the unknowable. B's 12th house is led by expansive and uber-deep Pisces, the sign of endings, dreams, and the intangible. This house is ruled by her Libra Jupiter from her 6th house, the diplomatic benefactor. You may remember him from the 9th house. He was that ruler as well. You could also look to her Sagittarius Neptune in B's 9th house, the inspirational wanderer. This would make Beyonce a deeply spiritual person with an almost ethereal spirituality, one likely very tapped into the great unconscious. She's very connected to the spirit world, and it wouldn't shock me if she's had experiences with spirits more so than normal. In fact, she may even be prone to nightmares, astral projecting, and vivid dreaming. Parasomnia of all kinds may be seen, like sleepwalking or sleep talking as well. The 12th house can tell you the conditions of your mother's pregnancy as well as your delivery. With chaotic Pisces here, it is likely that there was a lot of confusion and chaos before Beyonce was born. The biography notes that her parents had issues from the beginning of their relationship right up until Beyonce's birth, continued afterwards as well. And with the mention of her birth, we've made it all the way back to her first house. I hope this video does enough to soothe my own butt hurt that I chose the wrong ascendant for the Beyonce article I wrote. Again, link below, read it anyway, it's a good article. That article came in handy a lot here though. I would recommend Becoming Beyonce by J. Randy Taraborelli if you're a Beyonce fan, but maybe not if you're a Beyonce stan or if you are a casual listener to her music. He is very objective about a lot of B's life, which I preferred, but it may rub people the wrong way if they are defensive of Beyonce as a person and not just as an artist. For non-fans, the writing isn't good enough to supersede this subject matter, but he does have other biographies of other celebrities and public figures. I enjoyed it though. Either way, this video was long as hell. I appreciate it if you watched all the way through. There will be more of these coming. I have another edition of Reading the Stars on Prince Harry available in the article section on astrochiron.com, but the next Reading the Stars video will not be on him. Let me know if you share any placements with Beyonce, and if you do, how they show up in your life. If you're an Aries rising, you can take joy in the fact that you, in a way, live like Beyonce. A natural chart is quite the gift, so use it for good. And as my elders say, I'm not going to hold you much longer. The next video will be coming on Thursday. Get ready to get real comfortable and cozy with the moon signs. Get it? Cozy, like the second entry of Beyonce's seminal and grossly successful Dance House album from 2022. Yeah, I'm sure you got it. Thank you guys, and as always, much love.